using Sugar to launch Solana NFT Collection with Metaplex Candy Machine. Hey everyone, this is Keystrokes. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we'll cover Sugar CLI, which has replaced the old Candy Machine JavaScript CLI, and it's much more improved and way more user-friendly. So let's see everything we have done so far with Metaplex and Candy Machine. We have seen a bunch of videos which cover so many topics. We started with what Metaplex was, what Candy Machine was, and then we launched a NFT collection using Candy Machine, and then I created another video, especially for our Windows developers. Then we learned about whitelist and public mint, and how to do a reveal mint. And for all of those videos, we used the Candy Machine JavaScript CLI. And interestingly, a few days after I made my Windows video covering this topic, this CLI was deprecated. And just to be clear, deprecated doesn't mean it won't work at all. It's just not recommended to use, and any new Candy Machines should stop using the JS CLI. And that's why we are here. The Candy Machine JS CLI, it has now been replaced with Sugar. And trust me, Sugar did indeed sweeten the Candy Machine. So let's see everything that we'll cover in this video. So we'll start with setting up Sugar, and then we'll create a Solana NFT collection, of course on the DevNet network. And then we'll set up the Candy Machine UI, which will be its own setup, and we'll use that to mint our NFT collection. And before we get hands-on, let's just talk about why was Sugar released. So Candy Machine JavaScript CLI had a bunch of issues. It was hard to set up, the errors that it produced was hard to understand, all the configs were managed manually, and it just felt very cumbersome overall. And a lot of our Windows developers already faced issues when running the commands. And with Sugar, it's very easy to set it up. The whole process is very interactive. It has way better performance when you upload and you go through the process. The error messages are very user-friendly. I was really impressed when I used it. And the whole experience now, it's very streamlined. So I was very excited to start using Sugar. And yes, it didn't disappoint me at all. So let's get hands-on and start using Sugar. So let's do our first step, which is to set up Sugar and anything else that we need. Okay, so here I have the Metaplex documentation open for Sugar, and I'm in the installation tab of the instructions. Here, Metaplex provides ways to install Sugar for different operating systems. I'm on Mac, so I would be running this command, but I already have Sugar installed, so I will skip this step. For our Windows users, you can click on this tab and follow the instructions as they say here. And similarly for Mac, when you run this command, just follow the instructions and Sugar will be installed for you. And as always, let me make a note of all the commands that I'll be running. I have this commands.sh file where I'll be storing all the commands which I run throughout this video and then share it out with you. After you install Sugar, you can check that the installation was successful by running the command sugar -version, and then it should give you the version of Sugar that you have installed. In case this command doesn't work after installation, just restart your terminal or your editor. Sometimes it just needs to reload the path variable from your environment. The second tool that we'll be installing is the Solana tool suite. I have the documentation open for that right here, and similar to Sugar, they have instructions on how to install it for macOS and Linux, and if you scroll down, you'll find similar instructions for Windows. I already have the Solana tool installed already, but I'll make a note of this command, which you will run. And once you install it, you can run a similar command to make sure that it's installed properly. And the command is Solana -version. And that should give you the CLI version that's installed. I think my CLI is slightly out of date, but that should be okay. And before I forget, let me make a note of these commands that I just ran. This one was for Solana, and this one is for Sugar. And that's all you need to install to get ready to create your Candy Machine. Okay, now that the tools are ready, we should set up some of our wallets. We'll have 3 wallets in this case, which is Owner, Treasury, and Creator. We'll have some mint wallets as well, but we'll set them up when we mint. Okay, so for our wallets, we'll create file-based wallets using the Solana CLI. So before we start creating our wallets, I'll create a folder in our NFT folder here called Wallets. And this is where we'll store all of our wallets that we'll be creating. And to create a wallet, we'll run the command, which is Solana keygen new, and then you give out file as the parameter, and the value is the path where you want to create your wallet file. So in our case, we want to create the wallet file inside the wallets directory that we just created, and then we'll give the name of the file. So the first wallet will be owner wallet, and we'll end this in .json. Similarly, we'll have two more wallets, and I'll copy these commands. The second wallet will be for treasury, and the third wallet will be for the creator. So let's run these commands in our terminal right now. We'll skip the passphrase, and this is the public key that's generated for our wallet. Let's make a note of this in our notes. I'll copy this right here. And you can also see that owner.json was created, which will contain the private key for your wallet. Let's do the same for treasury and creator. So doing treasury next, we'll skip the passphrase, and this is the public key. Let's make a note of this. And then let's do the same thing for the creator. And let's skip the passphrase and copy the public key in here. I've also created videos in the past where we take these file-based wallets and import it into Phantom and vice versa. So if that's something that you need to do, please check out my previous video. So before we continue, let's do a few more things. First thing is to make sure our Solana CLI is configured to use the owner wallet. For that, we can run the command solana config set, and then we give it the key pair. And the key pair for owner is this. Now, if you know the basics of terminal, this is a relative path. That is, wherever you run your Solana commands from, it will try to find the wallet relative to that directory, which sometimes just doesn't work out. So I like to keep this as an absolute path. And to do that, make sure your terminal is in the right folder, which is the NFT folder for me, and then run the command pwd. This will give you the full path to your current directory. You copy this, and you replace this period with what you just got from the pwd command. And this is the full path to your wallet file. Once we do this, Solana CLI will always use this owner.json wallet, and it will be able to find it. So let's run this command. The second thing that we want to configure is to make sure that our Solana CLI is using DevNet, because we're testing out everything. And before you go to mainnet, make sure you test things exhaustively on DevNet first. To change the network for Solana CLI, you can run the command solana config set --URL and give the DevNet URL. Metaplex provides this DevNet URL, which I already have set in my Solana CLI. So I'll just copy this and paste it in the command here. Now let's run this command in our terminal. And we can see that the RPC value didn't change because it was already the right value. But in your case, make sure that this is set to Metaplex devnet rpcpool.com. Similarly, make sure that the key pair path was updated to use owner.json that we just created. Now, one last thing that we need to do with our wallets is to fund them. When we create our Candy Machine, it requires some funds to be in there. Right now, because owner.json is a new wallet, its balance will be 0. And we can check that by running the command solana balance. Let me make a note of this command. And when we run Solana balance, it uses the configured key pair that we set in Solana CLI to fetch the account balance for. Because we are on DevNet, we can request for some airdrop, and we can do that by running the command solana airdrop, and you can put whatever sol value you want. If you put too high of a value, it usually fails. So I like to do 2 sol, and that has always worked out for me. And I don't think we need any more than 2 sol for this project. Perfect. Now if we check our balance again, we see that it's 2 sol now. So we have our wallets created, we have our Solana CLI configured to use owner and DevNet network, and we have 2 sol balance in our owner account. So now let's move on to the next step. Okay, now the next step is to prepare our assets. Here I have the Metaplex docs again on Sugar, and if we look at the preparing your assets section, we scroll down, they provide a sample collection that we can use for our testing. If you have your own collection, feel free to use it, but for the video, I'll be using the sample collection here. You can click on this, which will give you a zip file, and you can unzip it. But I'll try to do everything through our terminal. So I'll copy the link address for the sample collection, and then curl it to download into our current directory. So the command that we'll be running is curl the link that we copied and where we want the file to be output at. In our case, we'll use the current directory and save it as assets.zip. Copying this command and pasting it in our terminal, we see that the file was downloaded and it's called assets.zip. Now the next step is to unzip it. For that, we can run the command unzip assets.zip. Let's run it in our terminal, and we can see that an assets folder was created, And inside here, we have a bunch of images and JSON files. And let's quickly go over these. So this is our NFT image. We have 10 NFT images starting from 0 all the way to 9. And that's very important. Our NFT images need to start from 0 and go up in number. And then for each image, we have a JSON file, which is the config file for the NFT. In this case, we have a bunch of key value pairs like name, symbol, description, and so on. And I've already covered all of these in my previous videos, so please do check them out. Also, with Sugar, they have added a new feature where you have an image for your collection. We can see that it's named as collection.png, and that's just the face of your collection itself. And this has its own configuration where you can define your name, symbol, description, and so on. Now let's go through the interactive setup, which will guide us through the whole process to launch our Candy Machine. Okay, so now let's run the fun interactive setup to create our Candy Machine. For that, we'll run the command sugar launch. Let's copy this and paste in our terminal. And we can see that the interactive questions have already begun. The first question is that it could not load a config file, and if you want to create a new one. And yes, that makes sense because we don't have a config file for our Candy Machine. So I'll respond yes to it. Now looks like we are in the Sugar interactive config maker, which will guide us through all the questions that it needs to generate a config file for us. First question is, what is the price of each NFT? Let's put it as 0.1 Sol. Found 10 file pairs in assets, which is true. We had 10 images in here, which are our NFTs. So let's respond yes to this. Also, it's smart enough to read the metadata file to understand that our NFT symbol is NB. We'll again respond yes to this one. The seller fee basis point is the royalty that you get, and we'll specify the value as 5% here. For that, we'll write 500. The next one is the go live date. You can use this format to specify the exact date when you want to go live. I'm lazy, so I'm just going to write now, which would enable minting right away. Next are the creator wallets. We'll have only one creator wallet, and the address for that is right here in our notes. Let me paste that here. We need to give a percentage share for this creator, and all the shares need to add to 100. So given we only have one creator, we can just give 100 right here. Now the Candy Machine provides a lot of settings that we can use, like using token mint, having whitelist, specifying some hidden settings, or end settings. In our case, we won't use any of it, but you can use spacebar to checkmark these in case you're interested in any of them. I'll create a separate video covering all of these options, but for now, I'll unselect all of these and keep our project very simple. I'll hit enter to continue. Next question is asking for our Sol treasury address, which we again have right here. I'll paste it here. The treasury address is where all the funds go from mints. So this is a very important wallet. Okay, let's continue. Next, it's asking about what upload method we want to use. I've used bundler a lot. I think that's the standard way to upload NFTs. So that's what we'll choose right now. So selecting bundler. Next is if you want to retain update authority on our NFTs. They recommend that we choose yes. That's what we'll do. Similarly, for the next one, if you want our NFTs to be mutable, we'll again choose yes for this as they're recommending. Okay, looks like it's creating our Candy Machine now. Okay, our Candy Machine was created. If we scroll up, we'll see our Candy Machine ID right here. Let's make a note of this in our notes. And now if you scroll all the way down, you can see there's a link here which says see your Candy Machine at this URL. So let's go and open this in our browser. Okay, this gives a summary of our Candy Machine. Our mint price is 0.1 Sol. It's already live because we chose now as a live date. And then all the item details are here. The royalty is 35%. And we have one creator. Okay, this looks good. Also, if we go back to our file explorer, we can see that it generated a bunch of files here. Like we have some logs for everything that we did. Then we have a new config file, which we generated by going through the interactive process. And then we have a cache.json file, which stores the Candy Machine ID and any other related data for the Candy Machine that we just created. And that's all that was required to create the Candy Machine. This was way smoother than using the JavaScript CLI. Well, that was easy, isn't it? Now let's set up our Candy Machine UI and actually perform a mint. Here I have the Metaplex talks again, but this time we are looking at the Candy Machine minting UI. Here, the first step is to run this command to clone the Candy Machine UI repository. Let's copy this in our editor. Now here you can see that they are cloning the repository to our home directory. And if you've seen my previous videos, I don't like to use the home directory because it causes issues for our Windows user. Plus, I like all of my project files to be in one folder. So I'll replace this with a period, which indicates that it should be checked out in our current directory. So copying this command and now running this in our terminal. We see that the Candy Machine UI folder was created here, which is basically a clone of the repository. Okay, so now the next step is to install the dependencies for the Candy Machine UI. For that, let's first go into the Candy Machine directory. For that, we can run this command. Let me make a note of this. And then we can run the command yarn install, copying this into the terminal and executing this. This might take some time. Okay, so now that the dependencies are installed, the next step is to create a copy of this .m.example file. To do that, we'll run the command cp.n.example and we'll copy it to a new file called .env. Let's run this command in our terminal and we can see we have a new file called .env right here. Now before we open that file, let's look at our notes and copy the Candy Machine ID that we made a note of. And now let's open this .env file and paste this value right here where it's asking for the Candy Machine program ID. Let's save this and close. Now the final command to launch the Candy Machine UI is to run yarn start. Let's copy this and paste in our terminal, and this might take some time again. Okay, so that now our server has started, let's open this URL in our browser, and here we can see the Candy Machine UI, and I already have Phantom Wallet set up, and it's asking us to connect the Phantom Wallet to the Candy Machine UI. Let's hit connect, and we can see we have 10 items remaining and the price is 0.1 Sol. And if I open my Phantom Wallet, we see we already have a wallet created here and that we are on DevNet network. Make sure you're on DevNet, and you can do that by going to the settings here, scrolling down and clicking on change network. And here simply select DevNet. Now going back, because we have 0 Sol, we have no funds to actually mint any of our NFTs. So let's copy this public key and go to a website called Sol Faucet. This is similar to the airdrop that we did through our terminal, but it's a nice UI that we can use. Here we can put the wallet address that we just copied, request for an airdrop of 1 Sol on DevNet. And it's saying it's successful airdrop. Now if we look at our balance again in Phantom for this wallet, we see we have 1 Sol now. So going back to the Candy Machine UI, if we refresh this, we can see that the mint button is now enabled because we have some funds. Well, let's mint our NFT then. Clicking on mint, it's asking us to sign the transaction and we'll hit approve. And here it says congrats, our mint was successful. And if we open our wallet, we should see our NFT in there. And this is the NFT that we just minted. Well, let's mint another NFT. Clicking on mint and approving the transaction again. And the mint was successful again. And we can see that the number of items has gone down to 8. Opening our wallet again to check out our new NFTs that we just minted. We see that we have 2 NFTs here, 1 and 5 that we just minted. And that's it. You created your Candy Machine using Sugar, and we used the Candy Machine UI to mint it out. I hope you had a good experience using Sugar. And if you've used the Candy Machine JavaScript CLI, you can tell that this process was way smoother. And if you had to compare Sugar versus Candy Machine JavaScript CLI, you'll realize that everything is very similar. Things just have been reorganized, and so all the previous videos that we have created, they are still valid. So I'll say check them out in case you want to dive deep into everything about Metaplex and Candy Machine. With the JavaScript CLI, we had to hand manage the configs, which was very error prone, and I've made a lot of mistakes while playing around with Candy Machine. But with Sugar, everything was so smooth thanks to its interactive process. Though you can still create your own configs manually, and you still have the same power that you had with the JavaScript CLI. I think this is the second best part that I love about Sugar after the interactive process. That is, the config files are organized. Previously, if you had, let's say, 1,000 NFT, then you'd have 1,000 config files for each of those NFTs, and a lot of those values were just same across all the files, which made it very redundant. Now with this new setup of config files, the Candy Machine has its own config file, and the NFTs have their own config file. Within NFT itself, each NFT image has its config file, and then overall for the collection, you have a separate config file and an image. So I'm really glad that Metaplex made this change. So overall, Sugar is just really good. I'll recreate my previous videos on whitelist mint and reveal using Sugar as well in the coming weeks. I'll also create videos on how you can use Sugar more effectively, as it provides various other commands like withdrawing the money which you paid as rent to create your candy machine. I hope that will be helpful. Well, that's all I had for this video. I hope that I was able to give you a good introduction to Sugar, and now you can launch your candy machine using Sugar. If this video was useful, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel and follow me on Twitter. I'll be working on more videos and they'll be coming out soon. I appreciate you joining in. Thank you everyone.